So if you watch my Photoshop videos, you'll notice that a lot of the Doctor Who Big Finish covers are based on stories you've probably never heard of. Well, a lot of them are mostly based on original ideas that I've come up with myself. And while I've never really written any of them down as I don't have that much confidence in them, I do still like to make the covers as a sort of start to keep that idea alive in the hopes of actually making it a reality. Though I have done a pitch video for one of them way back a couple of years ago. So I thought it'd be interesting for this second Doctor September to pitch another story. But before we get into it, I'd just like to ask, if you haven't already, please support the channel by hitting subscribe, turning on notifications, liking, commenting, and you can find and follow me on social media at the links here. Now, while I'm aware that this story is almost certainly not going to get picked up by someone like Big Finish or BBC Books to get adapted, I still thought it'd be interesting to share it and see what people think of this idea. The story is titled Whitechapel, featuring the second Doctor, Jamie and Zoe, and is roughly about 4 parts long. The original draft of the story was about 6 parts and had Ben and Polly with the Doctor and Jamie. However, upon a slight restructure, it made more sense to have Zoe instead of those two, and 4 parts is a much better length for it. Plus, the original ending I had to change because it went a bit too gimmicky for the subject matter. And going by the title, if you're not familiar with it, this story would deal with the murders of Jack the Ripper. It would be a pure historical that sees the Doctor bringing Jamie and Zoe to Victorian London, caught in the middle of a murder and a kidnapping. The Doctor is mistaken for being Jack the Ripper and he and Zoe are arrested, being separated from Jamie, who goes after the woman who had been kidnapped. With the police set to pin the murders on him and Zoe, the Doctor has to use his cunning and a bit of time travel trickery to convince them that they are in fact investigating the murders and were in fact undercover.
And now you add insult to injury by doubting my credentials! You know who I am, sir!
The police release them, but still don't trust them, and have to keep an eye on them, and as such, the Doctor and Zoe are caught in the predicament of having to solve the mystery of Jack the Ripper without having to reveal to the police. But it's their only chance of staying alive and finding Jamie, who we cut to throughout the story rescuing the poor young woman, but his confidence and macho nature is put to the test when he has to survive the harsh streets of Victorian London. Whitechapel would be a pure historical. I know we typically didn't get that sort of story in the late Troughton era. However, I think the plot gives each of the 3 leads an opportunity to shine, with the Doctor and Zoe using their intelligence to work out the mystery and identity of who Jack the Ripper actually was and whether or not he truly existed. A major plot point would be upon the Doctor citing the names of Jack's victims, we discover that one of them is the girl that Jamie's with, which leads to a bit of a Hitchcock bomb under the table type situation where we know that she is destined to die, but Jamie doesn't know that, which would lead to some dramatic conflict between the 3 of them and the importance of the web of time and how this woman's death is a fixed point. Zoe, because of her very cold, logical nature, basically sees this woman as nothing more than a footnote in a major historical event. The Doctor, of course, understands the importance of the situation, but we get to see his more sympathetic side to the situation and how he feels incredibly guilty at the prospect of leaving an innocent woman to suffer a terrible fate. And while he and Jamie are separate for most of the story, we get to see how close they are at this point in their relationship, as he talks about how much he envies Jamie's very to the point attitude that forget the web of time As far as he's concerned, this is just an innocent woman that he needs to protect at all costs, and admits that even if he was in Jamie's situation, regardless of how important he knew time was, he'd still go out of his way to try and save her. While I will throw in some moments of levity, it is a pretty bleak story. At no point would any of Jack's murders actually be depicted in the story. Instead, it's best to leave those grisly deaths to the imagination, and there's a particularly disturbing sequence where Zoe uses her intelligence to really get into the mind of a serial killer and why they would perform such disturbing acts, something that really unnerves the Doctor. It helps their cause to narrow down the situation, but to see her be so calm about such terrible things definitely makes him somewhat uncomfortable. The story will also have its fair share of social commentary, and explore that one of the reasons Jack was never caught was down to the fact that there was just so much general crime and murder going on anyway, that the only reason this particular act was given any notice was how brutal the murders were, as well as a bit of class divide and showing how the police, some of them aren't that concerned about these people being murdered, as they see them as beneath them, and we get to see different attitudes from the time, and the victim that Jamie is rescuing, we get to see her hopes and desires and how she's caught in a impossible situation and how desperate she is to escape her really quite terrible life. I won't go into too much more about the story, including the ending, but let's just say it's a bit more bittersweet than the original, which was quite cheesy and basically rips off the ending of Hot Fuzz. But I think overall it makes more sense in this situation. And if anyone is interested in seeing this story be picked up, please let me know. I know that's incredibly unlikely, but I thought I'd just bring it up anyway. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.